In the heart of the powerful and ever-growing city of Rome, a child was born in 100 BC into a family that carried both pride and pressure. His name was Julius Caesar, a name that would one day echo through history. But at the beginning, there was no certainty of greatness, only expectation. Caesar was born into the Julian clan, a noble family that claimed divine ancestry from Venus, the goddess of love. It sounded impressive, and it was. But by the time Caesar was growing up, his family's influence had faded. They had the name, but not the power. From a young age, Caesar showed something different. He wasn't just intelligent, he was bold. While other boys were content with comfort, Caesar was drawn to ambition. He studied rhetoric, philosophy, and the art of persuasion, knowing that in Rome, words could be just as powerful as swords. But Rome was not a peaceful place. The Republic was filled with tension, political rivalries, and dangerous alliances. And as Caesar came of age, he found himself caught in the middle of it all. His family supported a political faction that opposed the ruthless dictator Lucius Cornelius Sulla. That choice nearly cost Caesar everything. When Sulla rose to power, he began eliminating his enemies. Caesar was ordered to divorce his wife, an act meant to prove loyalty. But Caesar refused. It was a dangerous decision, one that marked him as a target. Suddenly, the young nobleman had to flee Rome. Stripped of his position, hunted by enemies, and forced into hiding, Caesar's life took a dramatic turn. He moved from place to place, relying on courage and quick thinking to survive. At one point, he even served in the military in Asia, beginning to build the skills that would later define him. But even in exile, Caesar never saw himself as defeated. Instead, he saw opportunity. Every hardship hardened his resolve. Every challenge sharpened his mind. He wasn't just surviving, he was preparing for a return, a rise, and a destiny far greater than anyone in Rome could imagine. This was not the story of a boy born into power. This was the story of a man who would fight for it. And this was only the beginning. The young exile had returned. And now, Julius Caesar was no longer just a noble with ambition. He was a man on a mission. Back in Rome, Caesar began climbing the political ladder step by step. He built alliances, gained popularity among the people, and carefully positioned himself among the elite. One of his boldest moves came when he formed a powerful alliance known as the First Triumvirate with two of Rome's most influential men, Pompey the Great and Marcus Licinius Crassus. Together, they controlled Roman politics. But Caesar wanted more than influence. He wanted glory. That opportunity came when he was appointed governor of Gaul, a vast and largely untamed region that covered much of modern-day France and beyond. What followed would change his life, and Rome forever. The Gallic Wars had begun. For nearly a decade, Caesar led his legions into brutal and relentless campaigns across Gaul. He wasn't just fighting to expand Rome's territory. He was building his legacy. Tribe after tribe fell before him. His strategies were daring, his leadership unmatched. He marched through dense forests, crossed dangerous rivers, and even built massive fortifications in record time. His soldiers didn't just follow him, they believed in him. One of his most legendary moments came during his expeditions beyond the known world. Caesar led his forces across the Rhine River, demonstrating Rome's power to the Germanic tribes. Then, in an unprecedented move, he launched expeditions to Britain, a land mysterious and largely unknown to the Romans. Even though these invasions were not fully successful, they sent a powerful message. Caesar was unstoppable. But behind the victories, something else was growing: power. Wealth from war filled his coffers. His soldiers became fiercely loyal to him, not to Rome. And back in the Republic, people began to take notice. Caesar was no longer just a politician or a general. He was becoming a legend. Yet, as Caesar's influence grew, so did the fear among Rome's elite. His allies began to drift away. The balance of power was shifting, and not everyone was comfortable with it. The man who once fled for his life was now commanding one of the most powerful armies in the world. And soon, he would face a decision that would push Rome to the brink. Because glory always comes at a price. By now, Julius Caesar was no longer just a victorious general. He was a force that could shake the very foundation of Rome. His campaigns in Gaul had made him wealthy, powerful, and adored by his soldiers. But back in Rome, That same success made him dangerous in the eyes of the Senate. The delicate balance of power that once held the Republic together was beginning to crack. The alliance that once protected Caesar was falling apart. Marcus Licinius Crassus was dead, and Pompey the Great, once his ally, had now aligned himself with the Senate. The message was clear. Caesar was no longer welcome. The Senate ordered him to do the unthinkable, disband his army, and return to Rome as a private citizen. It sounded simple, but Caesar knew the truth. Without his army, he would be vulnerable. His enemies were waiting, and his fate would likely be exile or worse. For Caesar, this was not just a political decision. It was a moment that would define history. Standing at the edge of a small but significant river in northern Italy, the Rubicon River, Caesar faced a choice. Roman law forbade any general from crossing into Italy with an army. To do so was to declare war against the Republic itself. For a brief moment, the future hung in silence. Then Caesar made his move. He stepped forward, leading his army across the river, and famously declared, "The die is cast." With that single act, there was no turning back. Civil war had begun. As news spread, panic swept through Rome. Pompey and many senators fled the city, unprepared for the speed and boldness of Caesar's advance. Town after town fell without resistance. Caesar wasn't just marching, he was taking control. When the two forces finally clashed, it was clear that this would not be a quick struggle. Caesar pursued Pompey across the Mediterranean, determined to end the conflict once and for all. Their decisive confrontation came at the Battle of Pharsalus in Greece. Despite being outnumbered, Caesar's brilliance on the battlefield secured him a stunning victory. Pompey fled, but his fate was sealed. Caesar had done the impossible. He had defied Rome, challenged its leaders, and emerged victorious. But victory came with consequences. The Republic was no longer the same. Its laws had been broken, its leaders scattered, and at the center of it all stood one man, stronger than ever. Caesar had crossed the Rubicon, and in doing so, he had crossed a line from which Rome would never recover. The war was over, and standing above the ruins of a broken republic was one man, Julius Caesar. After his victory over Pompey the Great, Caesar returned to Rome not as a general, but as its undisputed ruler. The Senate, once powerful and proud, now had little choice but to bow to his authority. At first, Caesar did not declare himself king. Rome despised kings. Instead, he took on a different title, dictator. It was meant to be temporary, a position used only in times of crisis. But this time, it was different. Caesar was named dictator for 10 years, and then, in a move that shocked many, dictator for life. Power had reached its peak. Yet Caesar was not idle. He didn't simply sit on a throne and enjoy control. He began to reshape Rome itself. He introduced bold reforms aimed at stabilizing the Republic and improving the lives of its citizens. He reorganized the calendar, creating what we now know as the Julian calendar. He reduced debt, provided land for veterans, and expanded the Senate, bringing in new voices from across Roman territories. He even planned massive building projects that would transform the city's landscape. To the common people, Caesar was a hero, but to many senators, he was becoming something far more dangerous. A king in everything but name. Whispers began to spread through the marble halls of power. Some believed Caesar's ambition had no limits. Others feared that the Republic, the system that had governed Rome for centuries, was slipping away. Then came a moment that would haunt his legacy. During a public festival, a crown was offered to Caesar. Twice, and twice he refused it. The crowd cheered, relieved that he had rejected the symbol of monarchy. But not everyone was convinced. To some, it felt staged, like a test to see how Rome would react. Among those growing increasingly uneasy was a man Caesar trusted, Marcus Junius Brutus. Known for his loyalty and honor, Brutus found himself torn between friendship and duty to Rome. Because if Caesar truly intended to become king, then the Republic was already lost. The tension was building. Behind closed doors, a group of senators began to meet in secret. They weren't just concerned citizens anymore. They were conspirators. And at the center of their plan was one goal: stop Caesar. Forever. The man who had conquered Gaul, defeated his enemies, and risen to ultimate power, now stood at the height of his glory. But sometimes the higher you rise, the harder the fall. And in Rome, betrayal was already taking shape. The tension in Rome had reached a breaking point. Julius Caesar stood at the height of his power, praised by the people, feared by his enemies, and watched closely by those who once called him ally. But beneath the surface, something dark was unfolding. A conspiracy. A group of senators, bound not by friendship but by fear, had made a decision that would change history forever. Among them were powerful figures like Gaius Cassius Longinus, and most shocking of all, a man Caesar trusted deeply, Marcus Junius Brutus. They believed they were saving the Republic, but what they were about to do would plunge Rome into chaos. The date was set March 15th, 44 BC, the day known as the Ides of March. On that morning, the air felt different. According to legend, a soothsayer had warned Caesar to beware the Ides of March. Even his wife, Calpurnia, troubled by nightmares, begged him not to go to the Senate. For a moment, Caesar hesitated. But power has a way of silencing doubt. Determined to show strength, Caesar made his way to the Senate meeting held at the Theater Pompey. Ironically, it was a place built by his former rival, Pompey the Great. As he entered, the senators gathered around him. At first, it seemed like a normal meeting. Then suddenly it began. One of the conspirators stepped forward, pretending to present a petition. As Caesar refused, another man grabbed his toga. In an instant, blades were drawn. They struck. Again and again and again. Caesar fought back at first, shocked by the betrayal. But then, he saw a face he never expected among the attackers. Brutus, the man he trusted, the man he may have loved like a son. And in that moment, something inside Caesar broke. According to legend, his final words were, "Et tu, Brute? You too, Brutus?" Then he stopped resisting, overwhelmed by the attack. Caesar collapsed at the base of Pompey's statue, his body pierced by more than 20 wounds. The most powerful man in Rome was dead, but the conspirators had made one fatal mistake. They believed killing Caesar would restore the Republic. Instead, it unleashed a storm. The people of Rome did not celebrate. They mourned. Anger spread through the streets. And soon, new leaders would rise from the chaos, including a young man named Augustus. The Republic was not saved. It was transformed, because Caesar's death did not end his legacy. It ensured it would live forever.